Hi, thanks for spending time with me today. This is number 12 in Nathan Ost's second volume of 21 Lip Flexibilities. These are starting to get a little bit annoying to me, and I hope that what I've learned from working on them will help you in your endeavors. So if you actually try this one, cut yourself a little slack. Don't try and force yourself to make it sound good, but as I often say, build it from the ground up. So I'm going to try and play through this one, see what happens, and then we'll get to work. So you heard a little scuffling in there. I had to slow down a little bit, and that's because I wasn't ready for what's coming. Part of that is just knowing it a little bit better. And so I'm going to go back and look at the spot where I had to slow down to accommodate my lack of skill. Now, of course, I'm trying to play it fairly quickly. Let's see, that was, yeah. So that's pretty quick. Let's see how close I am to the top tempo. Okay, so it's 54 to 66. Not too close. So that gives you an idea. Let me try and play it. So now I've exceeded my skill level a little bit, and you can tell it's getting rough. So, okay, I can play it. If I were playing this in the middle of something like that, in the middle of his improvisational chorus on a jazz tune, for example, no one would notice the little scuffles. As a matter of fact, they'd probably go, "Wow, that's really cool," because it's really busy and I'm moving around, and it sounds very active and interesting musically. But from a classical trumpet player's standpoint, that was really sloppy. So it's all a matter of perspective. And the thing you need to keep in mind is that if it's sloppy, then the faster you try and play it, the more sloppy it's going to get. It's going to become rougher and more difficult. The smoother and the simpler it is when you're playing it, the faster you're going to be able to go without losing that smoothness. And that's the way to make good decisions, to make good judgments, good evaluations in your practice. So I knew where I got in trouble. I'm going to go back and work on it now. So now I'm going to go way, way slower. Second line. Even at that tempo, I'm scuffling a little bit. Now, I've got better control. You can hear that, I hope. And starting to feel a little bit more competent, like it's better. So I'm not pushing against the edges of my skill. But I've still got a little bit of tension in the body, and things are not lined up quite well. So I think from, if you've been watching any of my videos, you can see what a meticulous process this is. And yet you want it to be a musical one as well as a physical one. And I know a lot of people that I work with get caught in the details, lost in the details, you might say, of trying to control all the physical things that are going on when you're playing. And that's kind of a lost cause. You can't really consciously control everything at the same time. You're trying to get into a flow state. You're trying to get in sync with the movement of the music and be always flowing forward to the next thing that's happening. You heard me the first time through kind of halting a little bit. I wasn't able to flow through. So that flow state is a high value target. Now, what's something that would make it easier for me? Well, you notice in many of these exercises, there are simple patterns, and that's great. So if you break the patterns down, you can see that The melody, if you want to call it this, which is just the lower note of all the bars, that note stays the same for the whole bar or even 2 bars. So the whole first phrase is this. Well, that's not too complicated. What's the part that's moving? Oh, that upper line. I always have to be ready to sustain the upper line. And what most players have trouble with is they go back down to play the lower note, and now they're not ready to carry that upper line. So part of this is psychological. A lot of it is physical, because if we let go and kind of collapse the embouchure a little bit, or if we're a smile player, which is the way I started out, we'd be going. We'd be stretching and puckering our lips for the changes between the upper and lower notes. If you watch great players, you'll notice they're generally speaking not doing that. The embouchure looks very stable. And that's something to certainly try and emulate. But that's fine to try and do that, but it doesn't work unless everything else is working. So that's why I try and keep it simple. So I had a little fun playing that line when I've heard the upper line. And then I'm also thinking when I'm playing both of the upper line and the bottom note together, I'm just sustaining the bottom note, and I'm hearing the upper line. See, there is a psychological aspect to it. I'm going to play that again because that made me feel much better. Now I can hear some music. So it doesn't feel or sound so much like an exercise. Now, this is going to be a stretch for some of you. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't tried this ahead of time, but it is similar to a lot of the things that I try to do when I'm practicing. In other words, it's a bit of a creative process. So since I just played a melodic line, I'm going to do something like, for those of you familiar with the Arbon Carnival of Venice, the final variation, bum, 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 da, so you have all these 30-second notes jumping around, but the melody is dun, 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 dun. Same thing happens here, right? So I have that upper melody. What am I going to do with it? Oh, I'm going to try and play the upper notes with more projection, at a more singing, more open, maybe a little bit louder. And the lower notes are going to be like an accompaniment, as if I were sustaining them mezzo forte. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and put it in a frame like, okay, the upper notes are mezzo forte maybe, and the lower notes, the steady note that goes all the way through, are mezzo piano. And I might mess around with that. What does that mean? I don't know. I need to make a decision. Now, when some of you tried that, it will probably make you crazy. And if it does, that means you haven't found the place where you can blow free, smooth, and continuous supported air. So there's a lot of manipulation going on. You know, jaw, lips, tongue, mouthpiece pressure, throat, and pushing and pulling with the air. And all those things make the road really, really bumpy. So that sounded and felt pretty easy to me. So I'm going to make it more difficult for myself. I'm going to play bigger dynamic changes. So now on the lower note, and the more I exaggerate the dynamic change, especially at that speed and with those larger intervals, the more pressure it puts on my skill. And I can tell, no, I don't quite have this yet. Why? Because I'm going, and what I want is, so the air change is very, very simple, very easy, very gentle. It's not pushing and pulling with the blower. The blower is just simply following through the line as necessary, supplying the right fuel. And the agility comes from someplace else. Now, I'm not going to get into the specifics of mechanics. I know I keep going there a little bit. That's because that's what I really want to help you folks with. But there is a specific skill with this, but there are so many ways to do it on the trumpet that most people get pretty confused in the body because they're trying to get the musical results by using, half a dozen different skills changing that are happening automatically. The mouthpiece pressure changes, the tension of the lip changes, the push in the air changes. And when you're changing notes over wide intervals rapidly like this, you can't do that because your body doesn't have the capacity to change that quickly. So that's the basis of the problem. What I'm always looking at is what's the basis of the solution. I'll go back to the beginning. It is maintaining the balance in the sound through each note to the next note and between the notes as you go from one note to the next. So you're doing it as if you were doing it vocally with a continuously produced sound. Now, let's say I got that working, and I haven't practiced this, but this is an example of what I would do. I would single tongue it, and of course I'm going to do it a little bit slower first. Let's see, this is the top tempo. So I could single tongue that. Now that's pretty darn rough. And I know I can do it when I'm slurring it. That feels doable. I can manage that and I can improve that. As soon as I add the tongue, I got a problem. So what am I going to do? Slow it down. But the main thing that I'm doing is sustaining the sound all the time. Now there are many times in music where you don't sustain the sound, and that's just another step in breath control. We already know how to do that. And you may disagree with me, but you see how I'm talking and then not speaking, that there's silence between my words. So anytime we want, we can suspend the airflow and yet be ready for the air to continuously flow. Now you don't have to worry about that in here for this particular exercise because you're flowing continuously. And that's what you should really be practicing, and that's what we are practicing on these flow studies, these flexibilities. Okay, that's probably more than enough, but I hope it gives you some ideas and some things to work on in your practice. And all I can say is try not to get too frustrated, and find some enjoyment in your sound, enjoyment in the physical sensation when it's working well. And that enjoyment fosters the skill instead of just being frustrated and angry that you can't get it to sound right all the time. Find the joy, find the pleasure, and then when you see what's going on, do the necessary work in order to gently and persistently train your body to do the right thing. Amen. Okay, that's enough sermon for today. Go practice. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.